everyone. My name is Tara Lynn Hughes, Senior Vice President with TD Bank. We're so proud at TD to be the presenting sponsor of Conversations at the Royal. This speaker series is about bringing critical mental health tools, resources, and care to people in need. Never has this been more important. Living through a pandemic has put challenges in front of Canadians that we've never experienced. And every day at TD, I can see it's testing the mental health and emotional well-being of our employees, our customers, and our communities. That's why conversations around wellness and mental health must be a priority. As always, the Royal Ottawa Foundation is standing tall, and I want to thank them for organizing this important series of virtual monthly events. I believe the Royal and TD share common goals, and that's to advance better health and contribute to open, inclusive, respectful, and dignified conversations that promote recovery and break down stigma. Today and every day, we'll continue to stand together, support each other, and be resilient as we move forward in 2021. On behalf of all of us at TD, thank you for your support and for participating in these very meaningful conversations. Take care, everyone, and be well.
Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to Conversations at the Royal, presented by TD. I'm Ian Mendes, your host here for the next hour or so, and a sincere thanks to our friends at TD for sponsoring this, for doing it all year. You know, we've had a handful of these. We're kind of reigniting them here in the fall, and we did them last fall, last winter, into the spring, and I think they were just terrific, dynamic conversations that we had, and we're excited to have this one with you here today. Kind of all about finding joy and happiness and hope and transformation here, is hopefully, fingers crossed, we're starting to slowly get out of the pandemic. I know I probably said that last year at this time, but it really does feel like we are moving in the right direction. So we want to leave you with some tools this evening. You're going to hear from some experts. You're going to hear some personal stories. We want to leave you with some kind of tangible tools that you can walk away from this session saying, you know what, I feel better equipped to help myself or help a friend or a colleague or whoever it is, family member that, might need a little bit of help and a little bit of support. So I want to walk you through this process here in case you're not familiar with our platform here, because I think everyone's kind of used to Zoom and FaceTime and Microsoft meetings, and maybe you're not used to this brand live setup. So I'm going to just run you through a couple of things here. Right side of your screen, you're going to see a chat box. And we want to make sure that you pay attention to the chat box, because at the end of the session here, probably close to the top of the hour, close to 8 o'clock our time here on this Thursday, we're going to ask you to fire away with any questions that you have for our panel this evening. So get any questions or thoughts or concerns or comments that you have into that. About the last 10 or 15 minutes are going to be dedicated to a Q&A. If you find that there's a technical glitch, if you're finding that I'm glitchy or I'm lagging or some of the things are happening, you're just going to hit the F5 button. It's the old refresh, okay? Hit F5. It'll likely solve any of the issues that you're having. So, and by the way, at the bottom of your screen too, you're probably going to see some little kind of additional information, some notes, some things about our special guests here that are joining us this evening. And that's the perfect segue for me to bring in a very, very esteemed psychiatrist at the Royal, Dr. Tim Lau, who is, I'm going to join him, or he's going to join me here on the stage here. And we're going to talk about fostering resilience and hope when you're kind of faced with some stress and some uncertainty. You know, Dr. Lau was nice enough to join me last year. We were just talking about this off air. I think it was in January that he joined me, and sometimes it does feel like time flies. So let's hopefully bring Dr. Lau into the conversation here on this Thursday. And yeah, 9 months has gone by. Dr. Lau, how are you on this Thursday?
Oh, very, very well. Thank you. It does seem like a different world than it was in January, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. I feel like there's a little bit more optimism, a little bit more positivity, and you would know something about that because they like to call you the happiness doctor. In fact, I love the outfit you're wearing. that kind of exudes happiness to me. I'm seeing the green, it's popping on my screen. So you got to tell our audience here today, Dr. Lau, how did you get stuck with the name? Not stuck. It's stuck sounds like it's a bad thing. How did you land with the name the Happiness Doctor?
I should just say about colors, in my research, it's pretty clear that colors actually are associated with happiness, just like shapes. They say that round shapes are more happy than angular shapes, because I think maybe evolutionarily they're with sharp things it's kind of dangerous, but round things that are colorful are actually more likely to bring you happiness. So if you have some balloons and colors, that's me. But I try not to be too round, but that's the color of the shirt that is the reason. As far as the happiness name, it came from giving a talk for the Royal about 10 years ago on happiness. And the name sort of stuck because I've been giving talks on this stuff for about 10 years. And I have to say I encourage it, because I'd rather be called Dr. Happiness than Dr. Depression or Dr. Distress or something like that. And it's kind of a beautiful thing, because when I give talks on happiness, it always makes me feel happier. So I sort of have a vested interest in continuing to spread some of these messages, which I feel really, I've learned so much from my patients over the years, and I'm so happy to share some of the wisdom that I have I've gained from them. So,
I think a legitimate question to ask you here is, like, is happiness, is it even realistic? Sometimes I think of happiness, Dr. Lau, and it's this sort of abstract idea, this concept that a lot of people can't quite wrap their head around, and it's a temporary feeling. Like, is happiness a realistic goal for people to try and achieve in their lives?
well, I would say that, many people say that it's not a good thing to search after because it's so hard to achieve. But the reality is, it's like philosophers from the beginning of recorded history have always talked about the search. Not because it's so easy to find, but because everyone's actually searching for it, whether or not they realize it. Pascal in the 17th century said that even people that are trying to commit suicide are trying to be happier. It is whether or not we realize it, it is something we're all searching for. And it is, I think it is important for us to realize that some things make us happy and others don't. And many times the things that we think are going to make us happy actually don't make us happy. So I was going to ask you, Ian, if you could tell me how you would define happiness. What does happiness mean to you?
Yeah, you know what? And I think that's a great question, because I do think happiness can be an elusive thing. And I think, especially I work in a really high profile profession. I think there's a lot of people who look at me and think, wow, that guy has a really cool job and he gets to travel around and he gets to talk to hockey players. That's probably where he gets his happiness from. And the answer is no. You know what? I'll tell you the thing that makes me the happiest. In fact, as soon as I'm wrapped up this evening tonight, I'm getting rid of this sweater and this little dress shirt of mine. I'm throwing on my workout gear. I'm racing up the road to the Nepean Sportsplex because my daughter's on the ice and I can get there for the beginning of her practice tonight. That's what brings me happiness. Dr. Lau, I think the thing that has really brought me the most happiness in my life are the things that love me back. So my job doesn't love me back. My house, my car doesn't love me back. The things that love me back, my children, my wife, my friends, some of my coworkers, not all of them, some of them, but it's the things that love me back that bring me happiness. It's the things that don't love me back that I think we sometimes get lost in trying to chase them, and whether it's money or fame or jobs or status. So that, if in a kind of roundabout way, would be the answer to your question there.
Geez, I don't think I need to give my talk. Well, what I would say is that's not what most people describe as happiness often, because I think you hit the nail on the head, which is that the most important things in life aren't things, they're people.
Yeah.
And there's a tendency for, I think the biggest problem of mankind is that we tend to love things and we use people. But the thing that brings us happiness is actually loving people and using things, but we have it backwards. So, but I think the question of happiness is, the challenge we have, I think, in our day and age is that what we think of happiness is often not what will make us happy. The modern sense of happiness is found in the Old English word hap, which can be found in happens or happenstance. And there's a connection with the idea of luck or circumstances or fortune, that if only this would happen, then you would be happy. But the reality actually is that happiness is more like the ancient view of happiness, which is related to choices. So, Aristotle's eudaimonia is more about virtue in accord with reason. So good choices in accord with reason. So living a more objective life. The challenge of subjective stuff is that it needs to be connected to something objective. Just having subjective happiness is not the answer. What we think makes us happy. I mean, Dan Gilbert is a psychologist from Harvard. Asked the question, would you be happier breaking your neck or winning a lottery? And for most people, winning a lottery is their vision of what happiness is. But the research actually doesn't show that. I think people who win lotteries, it often has a very difficult effect on relationships, which are the things that in general will be the source for our happiness in the future. So, yeah, I think the reality too of the research is that only about 10% of our happiness is dependent on our circumstances. So the modern sense of happiness is where you're waiting for something to happen in your life and then you're going to be happy. And but because only 10% can change based on your circumstances, it's not going to really make you happy. What's going to make you happy is the things that you described, and I think sports is a fantastic thing that we need to do more of, or to cheer on, because sports breaks down barriers. It teaches us how to lose. It teaches us to be part of a team. It breaks down barriers because, when it's Sens playoff time, we're all Sens fans. And, that us versus them that we are sort of experiencing now gets broken down. So I do think that it's a beautiful thing to see your kids do well and thrive. And anyway, I could go on about your excellent definition, but it's generally not the definition people often give. So thank you for that.
Yeah. I'd love to ask, first of all, I don't know what this Sens playoff thing that you're talking about. I haven't experienced that in years. I do want to ask you, though, a little bit about the science behind this, because I think for a lot of us, we're just, we would love sort of a layperson's explanation about the work that you do kind of from a scientific perspective. So is there kind of, I guess, for lack of a better term, Dr. Lau, is there a science to finding happiness?
There indeed is. I have an acronym for looking at the science of it. I haven't included all the scientific studies, but I could if you guys wanted me to explore some of these different points in this acronym for seeking happiness. Shane, can we pull there you go. So the acronym goes seeking, and it's intentional, meaning when you seek something, you have to intend to do it. It's active, it's not like the modern sense of happiness often for people is where you're just waiting for something good to happen so that you'll be happy. It's in the present tense. So seeking is in the present and not in the past or the future, and requires focus. Do I advance? Okay. Shane, can you advance the slide for me? All right. So the Dalai Lama once said, man sacrifices his health in order to make money. Then he sacrifices money to recuperate his health. And then he's so anxious about the future that he does not enjoy the present. The result being that he does not live in the present or the future. He lives as if he is never going to die, then dies never ever having really lived. The reality is we need to savor the right things. We may savor objects, but that in the end is not fulfilling for many reasons. Hedonic adaptation, Daniel Kahneman, who won the Nobel Prize for economics, also showed the problem of negativity bias, that we, along with the hedonic adaptation, we're more likely to focus on negative things, and we cannot fill the we can't overcome the negative things with positive things on equal footing. And the problem of savoring the wrong things is, you could end up being attached to things and not people. So I think one of the important things is the best things in life are free. So it's savoring things that are important. And Ian's example of his daughter and hockey and enjoying being with them and the smiles and the laughter, the triumphs of competition and teamwork, acceptance, those are all things that don't cost anything. And the problem is we focus a lot on stuff when we really need to be focusing on people. Which brings me to the second point. So the S was savoring. The other one was enhancing connection. And there is a lot of research to show, the Grant and Glueck studies were combined in the Harvard Study for Longitudinal Development. And what they showed clearly was, this is an 8-decade study. What they showed that relationships early on predicted success in the future, but also happiness and resiliency. And relationships, so this continued even into their 50s. People who have strong emotional relationships are more likely to survive longer, live longer, and be healthy, and they're less likely to develop dementia. In this longitudinal study, they looked at other health measures like blood pressure and weight and cholesterol and that kind of stuff. And the thing that predicts health and mortality much better than that are just the relationships. So in some ways, when we look at it from the point of view of preventative health, rather than focusing just on blood pressure and cholesterol, what we need to do is focus on relationships. And because I think, that we all have experienced this, the value of relationships. And, when you share joy, it's multiplied. And when you share sorrow, it's divided. There is this beautiful book by Chip Connolly on emotional equations. And he says that joy is love minus fear. The problem where joy is not just love is that when we love something, we're afraid often of losing it. We're afraid that the person may hurt us. There may be some worry that you have for the safety or the health of the person you love. And that sort of makes it harder to feel joy when you have love. And the pandemic has, as Ian said, the pandemic has changed things, and it has shown us how to connect, even if we can't connect in person. And we need to maybe try to enhance those ways of connecting when we can meet more. For sure, in the last talk I gave in January, we were not meeting like we are now, and it's a beautiful thing to meet in person. And you sort of really appreciate it a lot more, I find. Sorry about the technology. I'm trying to advance the slide there. Oops. So the other E is espousing excellence. So looking at, these are modern virtues, but the ancient virtues were fairness, self-control, wisdom. But the modern virtues of wisdom and courage and fairness, those are all things that will make us happy. And, whether or not it's seeking truth, the transcendentals, the Greeks understood, just seeking these things and finding them are ways of feeling joy and happiness. There are things that take away from our joy and happiness, like moral distress that came with the pandemic, division and hatred. But there are things that push us towards goodness, like forgiveness and belonging and compassion. We often talk about diversity, inclusion, and belonging. But those things are a recognition that it is a good to be connected with each other. And seeking beauty. I don't know if you guys have seen The Shawshank Redemption, but in it, this scene, Andy listens to an opera song and brings tears to the eyes of the inmates because it touches the soul to experience true beauty, and that brings us joy. So I think there is ways of experiencing joy that include aiming for things that are beautiful. So the K is kindness, and this is a quote from Martin Luther King. He said, "Those who are not looking for happiness are the most likely to find it, because those who are searching forget that the surest way to be happy is to seek the happiness of others." And it's part of our vocation in healthcare to help people. I think that the pandemic has really taught us a lot about ourselves and the work that we do and the meaning that we do of the work we do. It's important to be kind to yourself. Spend some time recharging and really playing. I think I've learned so much from watching my kids play. Time almost stands still when you watch your kids play, and there's a kind of joy when that happens. And there's a need for us also to be kind to ourselves. We have a tendency to, we are often not talking to ourselves like our friends would talk to us. And that's something we need to do, is to develop a kind attitude towards ourselves. The I is innovation, and the idea here is improving, because none of us can change how we feel just by willing it. We change how we feel by changing what we think or what we do. And that improves our spirits. And this psychologist from Chicago, Mickey Csikszentmihalyi, has this concept of the flow channel. And the idea is matching your challenge to your skills. So you forget you forget yourself really in the experience of meeting your goals. He actually suggests that we need to have a little bit more challenge than skill, because it keeps pushing us up. The N is the need for meaning, and the need for meaning changes everything because it gives us direction and choice. The great Stoic Seneca once said, "If a man knows not to which port he sails, no wind is favorable," which means we really need to have a direction if we want to get someplace. And Simon Sinek once said, "Working hard for something you don't care about is called stress. Working hard for something we love is called passion." And I think this is true. We can change our lives just by living with intention, meaning we change what we do and we decide with purpose to do it. So, if you take out the garbage and you do it because you love the people you're with, it's very different when you do it because you have to, or you do it without thinking of why you're doing it. Changing what you do changes the meaning. And there are numerous examples. I could tell you stories of people who they discover through adversity meaning, and this changes everything. I've heard people talk about, Viktor Frankl is a psychiatrist who lived through Auschwitz and really described how he discovered his freedom and the meaning behind suffering. The G is gratitude and grace, and seeing life as a gift. If you look at silver medalists, they often don't look as happy as bronze medalists. Adam Grant gave a great TED talk with Alison Felix, and there was a replication study of the original thing of how bronze medalists are happier than silver medalists, and I think it is consistent and true. The problem is not that a bronze medal is worse than a silver medal. It's the mindset of the person who wins the gold medal, the silver medal. The silver medalist thinks they could have won gold, and the bronze medalist thinks they could have won fourth. They could have gotten fourth. It's all in our heads. The person, obviously objectively, is better to have a silver than a bronze medal. But Alison Felix, she's one of the most decorated gymnasts in U.S. history. She's the one that she had the Nike sponsorship and then was dropped because she got pregnant. And then she described how the bronze medal was actually the medal that she valued the most. So there's two ways of looking at life: life as a gift or life as an entitlement. And I think that makes all the difference. I think when we are able to see life as something we are not doing or not getting because we deserve it, it changes everything, including all the gifts that we have in our lives, like our children and our families. So we can't do anything about the length of our lives, but we can do something about its width and depth. And that's the end of the acronym.
All right. Well, listen, that was really comprehensive, and it was really thorough. And now I feel like I have to have a better attitude when I'm taking the garbage out to the curb because of what you said there. I feel like I better be happy that I'm taking the garbage out. But you know what? Some of those quotes, the ones from the Dalai Lama, Martin Luther King, like, it's amazing how when they're put down on paper and then in this case put on our screens, like it's really powerful. Like those are great. Those are great, powerful quotes to really maybe change your perspective for the people that are watching this. So, Dr. Lau, listen, I know you're going to be coming back here shortly. You're not really going that far, but what I do want to do is ask anybody who watched that slideshow and maybe has a follow-up question. Now's the time to just drop it into the chat. Dr. Lau is going to come back here at the end in about 15 minutes or so. We'll wrap up with some questions. So if you have any questions for Dr. Lau on that presentation or on anything regarding finding happiness or hope or things like that, by all means, just fire your question into the chat box, and we'll be sure to get to them, as many as we can, by the time we're done at the top of the hour. So this next conversation is going to be really, really special for me because Kerry Moher is somebody who I've known for a long time. I've known the Moher family for about a decade, not through Kerry, but more so through his sister and her husband, who I went to university with and is one of my closest friends. And I got to tell you, Kerry, I couldn't be more proud of you. I told you this the other day. We had a chance to connect. How proud I am of you. How proud you should be. And I just want to take a moment here as we bring you in just to thank you for taking a few minutes here to share your story with us tonight.
Yeah, you bet. My pleasure.
And hey, listen, Kerry, why don't we start? I love how you're a true entrepreneur. You know why? Because behind you, I can see a red rooster, and I think it's your lumberjack sign. So before we get into your story, I think it's important for the audience to kind of get to know you a little bit. You're one of the people I know who's got like 6 or 7 side hustles going on, and you have a family, and you're a heck of a golfer, and you got all these things going on. So just tell us a little bit about yourself.
All of that's true. I have a passion, I guess, as I learned from Dr. Lau, for, I think, building businesses and bringing ideas to life or products to market. And I love the outdoors. I love, fishing, biking, skiing, golfing. And so to the extent that I can tie some of those, my sort of outdoor pursuits to business pursuits, that's probably the ideal for me. But yeah, life's busy. I've got an amazing wife and 4 young kids and lots on the go. But I'd say I'm as healthy and happy as I've ever been. So that's the good news.
Yeah, it absolutely is, and I think people that are watching this can see the healthy and happy version of you. But listen, Kerry, we know that it hasn't always been that way for you. That it's been a challenge, it's been a road. There's been obstacles. I guess the first question I would ask you is, when did you think that, hey, maybe I have a problem, and this is, we're going to talk a little bit about alcohol use. When do you think is the first time you say, you know what, I think I might have a problem? Was there one moment, one event that you can remember?
No, there's probably not one, but as I've sort of gone through this journey and done more research and worked on this, some of it I've actually known for a long time, but it was almost sort of buried. It was almost somewhat subliminal. When we did a move a couple of years ago. When we did, I uncovered a bunch of all kinds of old stuff. And one of them was, it was a schedule planner from my first year of university. I had a golf scholarship down in Kentucky. And inside this, I had my planner from all 4 years actually, and all these notes and stuff. And I was reading through it. My first year away from home in a kind of strange place, an amazing place. Inside the front cover are a couple of quotes about alcohol. And so one of them was from, I think it was F. Scott Fitzgerald, said, first the drink takes a drink. No, first you take a drink, then the drink takes a drink, then the drink takes you. And so that was 25 years ago. And it was odd that I would even have written that down, but something about that probably resonated with me. I probably could identify that, since high school, I would say I was a heavy drinker. I thought I loved it. I thought it was good to me. I thought it was fun. I thought it was doing all these positive things for me. So I would say in hindsight, I knew for a while, but I'd say I only uncovered it probably in the last couple of years.
And at any point here in the last few years, did you think, you know what, maybe it's something else? Maybe I'm dealing with something else, and that's the explanation for some of the challenges I'm facing.
Yeah, I looked, I looked probably everywhere, I've be, you know, in and around alcohol. It was, remember the quote from one of the Austin Powers movies. It was, he said, I was referring to, am I unhappy because I eat, or am I, do I eat because I'm unhappy? And I think, I had looked into depression. I wasn't happy. I had accomplished a lot, and on the surface, you should be happy. I had this beautiful family, amazing wife, and a successful career and lots of pursuits. But I wasn't happy, and I was kind of seeking and looking at different things, and the alcohol wasn't helping with that, but it was kind of masking it.
So you mentioned right off when I asked you to kind of tell our audience a little bit about you. One of the first things you said is got a wife and four kids. And uh, if you're able to just give us a little bit of an idea, Carrie, about maybe the impact that your own personal relationship with alcohol has then had on your personal relationship with your family.
Yeah, I mean, well, I eventually did go through a program and get some help, and I haven't had a drink in 2.5 years. So that's the good news. But most of my relationships were fractured by that point. I was fortunate enough. My kids are pretty young, and I don't think they ever really got to see the extent of the negative, the downside of it at that point. But certainly those closest to me, friends, family members, and especially my wife, it was really hard. Those relationships were broken to the extent that we weren't sure if we could repair them.
And I told you this before, I'll say it again. Like it takes a tremendous amount of courage to come up and speak about this, because there is an element that I think we as society and people like myself need to do a better job of destigmatizing and breaking down barriers and not making people ashamed if they need help in this particular area. How have you come to this place where you're comfortable enough to say, you know what, yeah, I'll get on this conversations with the Royal, and I'll share that. Like, it sounds to me like, Carrie, like, for lack of a better term, you've accepted your truth. And I think a lot of people might be watching and saying, like, how did you get to this place?
Yeah, I have, and I think, and that was my interest in doing this, was that it wasn't easy. It was hard to find the answers, and it's not obvious. And alcohol, it's not like some certain things are so obvious. There's all these things that are holding us back. There's these, as human beings, these things that take up too much of our time. They are these addictions. Maybe it's sugar or carbohydrates or gambling or um, devices, social media. For me, it was alcohol. And I think it was hard because it seemed like very few other people were struggling with this. Um, and so it wasn't until I could sort of dig in and say, this isn't an issue with me. This is an issue with alcohol. I didn't find it empowering to call myself an alcoholic or stigmatize myself as I have this disease or it's something that's incurable. I just had to sort of get to the information that said, like, this isn't good for you. It's not doing you any favors. It's got no upside in any way, shape, or form, and certainly to the extent that I was using it. And that journey kind of started with the Royal, and working with some of the staff there. That was the beginning of it.
Yeah, and maybe you can expand on that here as we close up, because I know that obviously, like, that's a big reason why you felt comfortable speaking today, and this is a Royal event, and I think that that's a part of it for you. So maybe just expand a little bit if you can, carry on the the role that the Royal played in your journey and where you're sitting today.
As much as I drank, I didn't know much about alcohol. I'd never, I guess, shouldn't be surprised. I didn't look into it too deeply. I didn't want to question it. So it really blew my mind once I sought help. What kind of resources were available? It was amazing. And what kind of people, and it really is about people, I think, at the end of the day. There's nothing more humbling or embarrassing than, I think, trying to get help. And so how that, the first time I went to the Royal, I was kind of looking for a way out, like if someone could open a door, I could have, I was looking to escape. I was kind of kicking and screaming. And the people there, they're so kind, they're so knowledgeable, and they're so comfortable. And that's really, really important in that first impression, that first interaction. And they help to kind of break down the walls, because it is difficult. There's a lot of sort of negative stereotypes with alcoholism and abuse and those sort of things. And that's kind of what you're up against, and it makes it harder to get help. And they really broke those down in a thoughtful, compassionate way that really helped me. And I could see how many others they've helped. So if, shedding some light on that today is helpful for anyone, then that's a big win.
Yeah, well, absolutely it is. Kerry, I got to tell you a couple of things here before we wrap up. 3 things, okay? Number one, I love the fact that you dropped an Austin Powers reference into this conversation. Didn't see that coming. Number 2, got my first hole-in-one in my life this summer wearing a Red Rooster golf glove. So I just a little shout out to your company. And number 3, I say this with all sincerity. I guarantee you, Kerry, somebody watching this video tonight or in the future will take it upon themselves to either act on behalf of themselves or on somebody that they love and say it's time to get help. So I just thank you so much for taking the time to do this. You have helped somebody out there, and I know that your words are taken to heart here by somebody on the other side of the screen. So thanks so much for doing this, Kerry.
My pleasure. Thanks.
Just a wonderful story of perseverance there with Kerry, and I think it's really important that we do a better job of making sure that if somebody is struggling with something, and Kerry brought up, I thought, some really good points in saying maybe it's alcohol, or maybe it's technology, or maybe it's sugar, or gambling. You might know somebody that is having an issue with something. And instead of stigmatizing them and mocking them behind their back or saying some things, it might be important to have that conversation with them or with their loved ones, or just figure out a plan to empower them and make sure that they feel supported. So thanks again for Kerry for those words. And now we're going to bring in Janet Cosier. And Janet is a champion for mental health in Ottawa and has been on if I'm not mistaken, Janet, maybe you as we bring you in here, can you give me a sense of how many boards you have sat on in Ottawa? Because I think you are somebody who has just been so helpful in this community. Give us a little rundown of all the boards that you've sat on over the years.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Ian. It's certainly a pleasure to meet you and be on the program. So yes, I've done a lot of volunteer work. I've been on the Queensway Carleton board. I'm on the Ontario Hospital Association board. I was chair, actually, of the board of the Royal a few years back, and I'm currently chair of a community health services center. So certainly, board work has been very much part of my world the last few years.
Yeah, absolutely it has. And listen, as much as we'd love to talk about your wonderful career, that's not the reason why we brought you on. We brought you on because I think we want your perspective as somebody who has been in a position, Janet, of being a caregiver for somebody who you love and who has kind of maybe seen that has some challenges around their mental health. So just for the purpose of our audience, maybe tell us a little bit, Janet, about your family.
Sure. Okay. Well, thanks for that. Well, Tony and I are both retired, so this is a very happy place to be. Back to Dr. Lau. It's wonderful being retired. Tony and I get to do some really special things. Tony was a high school teacher in Ottawa for 30 years, and he's also an accomplished author of several books of poetry, short stories, and plays. And I had a wonderful career at the Bank of Canada in the area of both finance and risk management. So we've had a wonderful world of working, but right now we certainly have become avid naturalists. We love the outdoors. We spend a lot of time outdoors, walking and hiking and really enjoying wildlife. So this is where right now we're getting our joy and happiness, really enjoying the outside world.
Yeah, I think we all are. We've kind of reconnected a little bit with nature, especially during the pandemic. So, and you mentioned your husband, Tony, and that's kind of the reason why you're joining us tonight, is to talk a little bit about your path and your journey. And maybe you could tell us a little bit, Janet, about what led to Tony ending up at the I know it's the geriatric program at the Royal back in the spring.
Right. So Tony has been an outpatient at the Royal for the last 5 years under the care of Dr. Loda. But last May, Tony was diagnosed with temporal arthritis. This is an inflammation of the actually blood vessels in your head. And he became extremely ill with this condition, which actually resulted in him also going into a serious depression. So the two were really tied very much together. And as a result, he was admitted to the Royal in June of last year because of his rapid decline in his mental health. So it was a sad place to be, and certainly COVID was very much a part of both of our world as he worked through getting better at the Royal.
You know, Janet, you've basically kind of got thrust into a position that no spouse wants to be thrust into, which is you become a caregiver. And I just want to ask you a little bit about that, because I think there's probably people in our audience who have been put into that role. And for a lot of people, they're not used to it. They're not sure how they handle it. It's very stressful and taxing on the caregiver sometimes to always be the one who has to be providing the support. And sometimes you need the support yourself. So I guess my question here to you, Janet, would be, you know, what would you like other people who might be in your position as a caregiver, what would you like them to know?
Right. So maybe just to say, when Tony actually went into the hospital as a caregiver, I was very happy and relieved that he was going to really get the care that he needed. But as the days followed, I really was grieving the loss of his companionship. And I started to feel actually guilty, and that somehow I had let him down. So I was sad, I was lonely, and I was afraid actually as a caregiver, and I couldn't see him. It was very difficult at the hospital to really be connected. So I really struggled with that as a caregiver. I think caregivers go through some very difficult emotions. But a few weeks later, I actually went to Andrew Hayden Park on the Ottawa River. I don't know if you know that park. It's a beautiful place where Tony and I love to go. And it was an absolutely glorious day. And I was inspired by those beautiful Gatineau hills and the clear blue skies and the sailboats floating in Britannia Bay. And at that very moment, I really was happy and joyful. And I gained my courage and my resilience and my hope, which we're going to certainly talk about in a few minutes. And at that moment, I decided that I was going to do absolutely everything I could do with the Royal to bring Tony back to life. I wanted to actually be part of that journey with him. Given COVID, it made it more challenging. But I became a big advocate. I started advocating for Tony and other patients for visiting opportunities, for us to get to see our loved ones. I sought to provide input to Tony's care treatment plan. And I truly believe, Ian, that caregivers have important roles, really working hand in hand with the professional staff. At the Royal, they have a team-based care model in the geriatrics department, which is exemplary. It's collaborative, it's integrated, and this is where clinicians from all different professions come together and discuss the patient's needs with the family members. So you get the psychiatrist, primary care doctor, nurse, social worker, physiotherapist, really working hand in hand with Tony and me to, help in that journey of recovery. So it was really very much part of how Tony and actually how I recovered by working with the Royal and the professional team. I also felt it was important as a caregiver to really share Tony's story with our neighbors and our friends. And this is where advocating for mental health, I think, is crucial. And interestingly enough, I found by my reaching out, other neighbors actually told me stories about their family as well. So advocating for mental health as a caregiver is a wonderful journey and is really crucial in terms of promoting mental health support.
Yeah, well, listen, that is so well said, Janet. And I love the image of Andrew Hayden Park, one of the nicest spots in our city. So I'm glad that has some meaning for you. So as we wrap up here, getting close to the top of the hour, we're going to do this like Brady Bunch style. You remember with the Brady Bunch when there's all the screens and you can see everybody here? I think that's what we're going to be able to do. We're going to take some questions. See, told you, Brady Bunch style here. We got Dr. Lau, Kerry, and Janet. And go ahead, fire away with any questions that you have. You can put them into the chat. We'll be with you here till about the top of the hour or so. Why don't we start with this one? We got a question for you, Kerry. First of all, this person writes in and says, thank you so much for the encouraging words. There are so many people out there who are struggling. How did you know that you needed help?
How did I know I needed help?
Yeah.
Well, I knew I needed help for a long time, but I wasn't willing to get it. I'd say, why did I get help? Because I was ruining all the best relationships in my life. I went through a program. I didn't run into anyone else who wasn't in a really bad spot. So I'd love to hear that, it's nice to be proactive and to identify and get out ahead of it. But I didn't see that often in my experience. That unfortunately it felt like you had to reach some form of rock bottom to really believe. And I think part of that is just these negative, it's a bit of an uphill battle. I would often say that, smokers aren't smokeaholics, but drinkers are alcoholics. They're sort of in this category, and it makes it difficult, I think, to just deal with just, there's nothing positive about alcohol. And yet I think it's 90% of, adults in North America consume it to some degree. Lots of people drink lots of it. It's the best of times, the worst of times, every occasion it's there. And so it becomes hard to completely pass on it. And I think it was just getting enough confidence that that was the right move for me for all the right reasons. I will say just one recommendation I had. There's one book that I did as I started to do a lot of research. There was one book that really jumped out at me. It's called This Naked Mind by Annie Grace. She does a 30-day challenge. Stop drinking for 30 days. It won't surprise anybody that you're going to feel great. You're going to you'll be healthier, happier, and you can make some better decisions at that point. And she goes through a lot of the science, just how bad alcohol is, where you start to realize, like, wait a minute, this is poison. Why am I putting this in? Is it good with my dinner? Is it a part of celebrations? Is it part of de-stressing? No, it doesn't do any of those things. So that was, I think, just the education piece was what resonated with me and got me to kind of finally take control of it.
And one more time, sorry, the name of that book, Kerry?
It's called This Naked Mind by Annie Grace.
Okay, This Naked Mind, Annie Grace. Okay, well, thank you for that. We're going to just go around the horn here. Some more questions. This one is, I think, for maybe for Dr. Lau. My son has multiple chronic health conditions, and it's painful to watch him suffer. How can I truly be happy when my child is not?
Wow, what a difficult question, but a very important one, because it's real life. We talk about happiness, but it is often in the context of incredibly difficult circumstances. And how do you, with your children, if they're suffering? It's hard to imagine being happy when your children are suffering. But I think the important thing is focusing on the things that you can control and change, and to put context and meaning to what you're doing. I think with your son who's suffering, I think as a parent, that's one of the things we do naturally is think about our children and try to make things better, and that's part of the, I think I would say the purpose in life for many people is putting a context and a meaning to the suffering, and I think it's such a hard answer. I think if you look at Dostoevsky's The Brothers Karamazov, it's exactly that same thing that we all struggle with. There's no easy answer to something like that, except it's accompaniment with and it's making sure that you're not alone, and to to share the suffering with other people, but also I think it's putting the purpose for everything we do, and to realize this is the thing that I have to do, that this is the part that I have to take control of. Because I think, as we were talking earlier about control, and that's a big part of both addictions and happiness. It's focusing on the things that you can change, and that's the thing that we have to work on to improve our lives and to have hope. And where it comes to hope and transformation, it's important to have hope. People can see when you have hope. My patients tell me often they can see when I have hope for them when they don't have hope themselves. So it's the same for your son. It's important for you to have hope for him, even if he doesn't have it. It's incredibly difficult, and maybe the hardest thing any of us can do in this world is see a suffering child. So I don't know if that answers that question, but I obviously feel for you, and I think the important thing is to reach out and connect with other people. I was saying that shared suffering is divided, and that's what I would say.
Yeah, no, that is very well said, and I think that absolutely helps provide a little bit of a roadmap here for that parent. I got a question here for Janet, who somebody wants to know, do you ever just take a break for yourself? And I think this is probably in context of when you're being the caregiver. Does Janet ever get some me time, and do you carve it out for yourself?
Absolutely. I think that's a really important concept. So I have certainly, I love reading, I love listening to music. So those are things that allow me to have my own space and my own time. So as a caregiver, absolutely, you do need that personal time as well to focus on yourself. Good question.
Yeah, fantastic question. Got a couple more here. And this one is really for anybody, but maybe I'll start with you, Kerry, on this one. And this person wants to know, hey, at any point, did you encourage your partner or anybody around you to join a support group for themselves to help kind of get through some of these things? So maybe, Kerry, I'll start with you. Whether it was your wife or family members or friends, did you ever say, hey, you know what, you need some help too, and you need to get supported?
Yes. In fact, we've been probably one of the best things to come of this is just counseling. You know, whether that's couples counseling or one-on-one, find someone that you can really connect with. And, you know, my wife and I, we do some counseling. It's great for us, and we each do some individually and should probably do more.
Yeah, and maybe Dr. Lau, you could just kind of follow up on that. The importance of, because I think too often, whether it's couples or individually, we don't do enough talking, and we certainly don't do it to a professional that can certainly help us and guide us through. Could you maybe talk about the importance of for the partners and the spouses and the support people to also make sure that they're maybe with a support group or seeing somebody?
No, it's so important to speak openly. You know, I think that's the problem, is we make assumptions, and that's what can be very hard in relationships. We assume things, and I think checking things out is really important, and realizing that your partner does have the best intentions for you. You know, I think one of the and when you're fighting with someone, there's a saying in marital therapy: how can you win if the person you love is losing? You know, I think we need to have that attitude where it's one where, you know, you can actually ask the person, you know, who you are close to, how can I be better at loving you? And it's a really open question, and dialogue. You'd be surprised how many people have a hard time just explaining or describing how they're feeling, and that creates a lot of can create a lot of resentment and difficulty if people don't talk openly. So so I would encourage people to talk openly in relationships, but also when you need help, to find out when you are needing help. There is something called psychological vitals. You know, one way to know you are maybe sinking below the surface is if you know, your sleep changes, your enjoyment of things, and you just don't seem the same. And, you know, if those things change, then either you need to change something of what you're doing, and it might be peer supports, it may be professional help, but don't be afraid to reach out for help, because other people have gone through it. And, you know, where I find a lot of hope is seeing people who struggle, because I know that they can get better, and that's part of the hope that I find in helping people, is realizing that they're the problem that they're experiencing, there's a way out, even though things seem very dark.
Well, you know what? I think that's probably the best place to leave it. I know we've just hit 8 o'clock here, so we're on the hour. I think that's a great place to leave it. And I love that little anecdote you told of, you know, how can you win when the person that you love is losing? What a great message to for all of us in relationships, and whether it's with our spouses or friends or coworkers. Yeah, right. How can you win when somebody else close to you is losing? So, Dr. Lau, Janet, Kerry, thank you so much for taking the hour, sharing your stories, and being so open here. I know that our audience got a lot out of this. So thank you so much to the three of you for joining us. And listen, before we wrap this up here, I just want to direct you to the bottom of the video screen here. There's a number of events coming up at the Royal. We're going to be doing these conversations at the Royal presented by TD kind of on a roughly monthly basis. So the next one coming up third week of November. Lots of opportunities, though, for you to support the Royal, and some men's mental health initiatives I know that are coming down the pike in November. So we ask you to certainly do anything you can to support the Royal. So just want to thank everybody for taking the time with the questions and for engaging with us on this evening. And until next time, everybody, take care. And thank you again on behalf of the Royal and TD.